accept a leader which has been chosen by the masses as our benefiter.
Provincialism, I think, is just one of the phenomena of the divide and conquer theory.
I do not feel that different languages in different provinces should break us up as a nation. And I think perhaps this is the time when we should think more about promoting Urdu as our language.
Welcome back from the break, everyone, where we still have Dr. Arif Alvi with us, and we are discussing provincialism. We've talked about provincialism at the macro level. Now let's talk about it at the micro level. When provincialism is going on, or in operation, so to speak,
yes,
how does it impact on me and you and everyone else on the street?
Very, very clearly, very easily. You know, for example, I belong to an my parents migrated from India. I was born in Karachi, but when I go to Sindh outside of Karachi, people ask me, why don't you speak Sindhi? You see, and it is a sensitive point, and I would like to learn Sindhi and be able to speak Sindhi because I belong to the province of Sindh. But it hurts my friends in Sindh, in interior Sindh outside of Karachi. It hurts my friends that you live here and you have not learned to speak. Now, why didn't I learn to speak? Because there was no opportunities when I was going to school to be able to learn that. So the people in a province need to assimilate. They can assimilate. For example, I have not learned Sindhi, and that is my fault. But we need to assimilate. And what usually happens, there are marriages between people that starts the assimilation. There is respect for culture between different ethnicities that starts formulating. So I think a unifying factor should be there. And how does it affect you and us? Remarkable things which I can tell you about our friends in Sindhi speaking part of Sindh. You will find something very remarkable, that the way they welcome you, the way they will go out of their way to handle you, the way they will treat you, the way they will dine you. And if you ask them, for example, for political reasons, I have been visiting all the cities in Sindh. If I would go to one gentleman and say, why don't you join a party, for example, and he would say that I'll have to ask my brother, the eldest brother. If he will give me permission, I would do that. So these are the beautiful parts of every culture, which I don't
every
find.
province.
Every
province has that kind of hospitality. Certainly in our country, in Pakistan, I know. I've traveled enough to know that. Within Pakistan.
So those are the beautiful parts. Then there's a Sufism in Sindh. There is a tradition of accepting. There's a tradition of not being in extremes. Sufism has been different from religious Shariat interpretation of religion. You see, the religious Shariat interpretation has been simply prayers, namaz, roza, hajj, zakat, the five pillars. And Sufism is a link between man and God also. So they have explained Sufism as this, Shariat is the circle of things, and Tariqat is the final link between. Shariat is obvious following of the religion. You pray, you do whatever you want to, you marry, etc., etc. And Tariqat is your link to God through the heart. So Sindh has been a part of a Sufi tradition, and Sufi tradition is more accepts more things rather than, it's not limited, it's not conducive,
so rigid, it's not
too rigid, it's not
so rigid.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about language? Because Urdu was a language that was created. Today, many people at many levels now question why they need to learn Urdu as a language when it has no international business benefit.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a question which is being asked in culture today, socially, when you
and of course, the English-speaking Dawn News will have to look at it.
But my question is this: language also, instead of providing a unifying, bonding, gluing force,
is a divisive force.
Has become a divisive force in Pakistan as well.
Yeah.
Urdu, which was supposed to be the gluing language, hasn't worked. Why?
Yeah. And you know what India did? India went to English because they had Hindi, which was spoken in a small area. Hindi was like Urdu with different Sanskrit.
Yes, right.
Raja made a statement in East Pakistan, which is often quoted in 1951 or 52, and he said Urdu shall be the national language of Pakistan. And it could have changed. You know, Quaid-e-Azam said it did not have to be a Bible for us. It could have been changed. For the matter of understanding, if a Bengali was forced to write in Urdu and speak in Urdu, and he felt resentment. Urdu was a Lashkari language. Urdu has so many words from Turkish, Arabic, from everywhere else. It was a common. It was like English of India.
The purpose was to disseminate information from the leaders to their various
and every language has
territorial controls.
And every language has a beautiful tradition. And I am so sorry to state that when I was going through school, I picked up advanced English and lower Urdu. The result was that what I appreciate today, the remarkable Urdu poetry, which is probably not there in a lot of languages, really.
Yeah.
But it is there. Of course, in Sindhi language there is poetry, in Punjabi language there is poetry. But if you are not aware of your own poetry, I think you've missed out a lot. So I think language, knowing, understanding your own language or your mother tongue is important. And then you have an extra language which could be English, which should be Urdu
business
and
language.
English. Three
Business
languages.
language, business language.
Why?
Why is it that today we look at the neighbor who sits next to us, or the car that's parked next to us at this signal, and we look to see what they're wearing, what hat they wear on their head,
And
how
I-
their shalwar kameez is stitched?
Yeah.
Why do we do this?
Because what has happened, there has been a struggle for resources, and then there is a blame game going on. If
What blame game?
Is that if there are less resources in Sindh, Punjab is responsible, Punjabi are responsible. And let me tell you, there is a bigger struggle which is coming on, which would be the water crisis. 2 rivers which Pakistan has, and even then we are not distributing water to the satisfaction of our provinces. See, IRSA is there. Industrial Distribution Authority, and IRSA describes what has to be done. IRSA made a judgment in 1992, which was not followed over the years. Now it has again reverted back to the judgment of 1992, which is closer to what Sindh wants. But this distribution, this resource struggle is going to be painful unless we try and start conserving water at some levels. It is already painful. Kalabagh Dam was not built because Sindh thought that when Kalabagh Dam will be built, there will be more control of water. It's like putting a tap on the
Another
first floor.
valve, yeah.
Another valve in the and if he controls
Further up
it,
the system,
if he controls it and we don't have
we don't
trust,
get anything
they
there.
started telemetry. You see, Siemens started putting telemetry instruments to measure the distribution of water. It never worked. It was never allowed to work. If telemetry works, at least we will know that this much water Sindh took, this much water Punjab took. Even that was defeated. So because of this mistrust, we start. There's a hate-mongering campaign. Why is there hate? I don't say that people are evil and they start a hate-mongering campaign, but they start saying that this province has done this to us, therefore this province is responsible, and therefore in riots you see the reflection of that hate, which is sad.
SMS is sad.
And those kind of incidents have also happened.
What do you think is the solution to this?
I think fairness. Solution to all issues in Pakistan is fairness and honesty, really. Solution will spring from that.
Would you equate fairness and honesty with democracy?
That's the only system through which fairness and democracy can come. Short of any other. Dictatorship will never bring fairness and honesty because I will not be able to challenge a dictator. A benevolent dictator is a dream of some people. But there hardly in the history of the world you hardly see a benevolent dictator. But we get fooled in Pakistan when a dictator comes around that this dictator will be benevolent.
Lots of them were nasty pieces of
nasty
work.
pieces.
Nasty
Because
pieces of work.
authority then makes you feel like people around a dictator tell the you know everything. What you've done is remarkable.
If all the provinces had full autonomy in Pakistan, would that help? At every
You see,
level, macro and micro.
Let's start from what Mujibur Rahman asked.
Okay.
Mujibur Rahman asked that currency, defense, and one other communication should be with the center. Everything should be with the provinces. That was an extreme demand for that time. Probably it was not possible, but it could have been negotiated. Today, the 1973 Constitution of Pakistan, the concurrent list has to be adhered to and given back to the provinces. That's a start. You give the provinces their rights, let them collect tax, let the center collect tax for its needs. But what happens every time a new government comes in, it has good control, then it forgets all what it has said. And there is mistrust. The mistrust has to end by more evolution in this situation, financially.
Thank you very much. My next question would have been, how do you remove the mistrust? But I think we'll be here till tomorrow morning, so might have to close it here. Thank you very much for joining us on the set, ladies and gentlemen. Provincialism, the macro level, the micro level, what it is, where are we going with this? Let's find out more after the break.